This is the 11.1 notes for pre-algebra called Intro to Horizontal and Vertical Lines. So we're going to walk through this together. You can fill this out with me, and if you have questions, you can always bring them next week. On Tuesday, I should be back to go through that. Okay, so this says exploration, basically says, let's see what we can figure out from these next few questions. First thing is, can we graph these points? So remember, when you graph points, the first number tells you the x value. That means how to go left or right. And the second number tells you how to go up or down. So if it's at -1 and then +2, this right here is the point for -1, +2. And then we have 0, 2. And then we have 2, 2. So right 2, up 2. And then at 5, you also want to go up 2. So once I plotted all those points, I want to connect it. But what I notice here is it's a straight line. It's horizontal. Okay, and so when we're asked to then find the slope of this line, if you were to try to use the graph and try to do like rise over run, you wouldn't have any rise. We couldn't go up or down anything. And so, or we could use the points. Like if we were to use the first 2 points, let's say, we would say, think of the slope formula, 2 minus 2. Those are the y's subtracted, and then do 0 minus a -1. I could have used any of the 2 points here, but I'm just trying to see what happens with the first 2. Now 2 minus 2 is just 0. And 0, this would be a 1 on the denominator, because 0 plus 1 is what we'd have for 2 negatives. But 0 divided by anything is just going to be 0. And so that's what's going to always happen whenever we have a horizontal line like this. If you have a horizontal line, that means its slope will be 0. And so then number 3 goes on to say, well, which variable seems to be stuck on a particular number? And so that's going to be the y variable, right? If you look at this is x and this is y for every single one of these. You say which one of them is stuck on the same exact number every time, and that's going to be your y variable. And it says, write an equation that would guarantee that every y coordinate is 2. And so to tell somebody to just make the y always 2, you would write y equals 2. So since all of the y values here are 2, that's how we write this equation. It's technically still in y equals mx plus b form because the m is still 0. But it just looks a little odd because it doesn't have an x at all in it. It's just y equals a number, and that number is where that line is sitting. Okay, so let's see what happens on the next scenario. We're asked to graph a few more points now. At -1, you want to go up to 2. At -1, you also want to stay at 0. At -1, go up to 4. And at -1, go down to -3. And if we connect those 4 points, the line looks like this, a straight vertical line this time instead of horizontal. And we want to find the slope of the line again. So again, if you tried to do rise over run with this diagram, with the graph, you could do rise, but can't do run. So there'd be no run. In case that's hard to see though, let's use the slope formula with any 2 points. Again, I'll just pick the first 2. So this would be 0 minus 2 divided by -1 minus a -1. And so the top number becomes -2, but the denominator would be -1 plus 1, which is actually 0. Now the answer on this one is not 0. This does not equal 0. When 0 is in the bottom of a fraction, or anytime the 0 is in the denominator, that would be what we call undefined. We can't define the slope, so we call it undefined. So anytime you find yourself with 0 in the bottom, that's how we write our answer. We've done this a little bit last unit, or the unit before even. That's all we have here. All right, number 3 then goes on to say, well, then this time, which variable was it that keeps getting stuck on a certain number? And so if I look again at my x and y's from my coordinates, this time the x is what was stuck on -1. So the x variable is the one that's stuck. Well, now, so this time when I go to write an equation that would guarantee that every coordinate is -1, I'd have to write it as x equals -1. It's no longer in y equals mx plus b form because there's no y equals to start with. this is always what it will look like when you have a vertical line, which we're about to summarize here on the bottom. Okay, so let's look at the bottom here and we'll see why it is that vertical lines and horizontal lines look like this. And so looking at the first, we're going to start with vertical, which is the one we just did right here. Vertical means up and down like this, straight up and down, right? And it says every point on a vertical line contains the same x value. Okay, so the x value is always the same for any vertical line because it'll always be the same x value that all the numbers are sitting at. But it won't always be the same y value. The y values will vary. But now here's what it says. The equation for vertical lines is always x equals a number. It can be any number, positive, negative, 0, but it just depends where is it on the graph. The slope for vertical lines, I'm sorry, this is a typo actually. This should say undefined. All right, whereas this one should say 0. Sure you fix that because I don't want you to get confused. I don't know how that happened. I didn't catch it sooner, but the slope is undefined for all vertical lines, like this says. It's always x equals a number, but again, slope is undefined because the 0 can't be in the denominator of the fraction. What can be helpful sometimes is like a mnemonic device. Sometimes people memorize this little saying like vox, and then this part will say hoi. If this does not help you, ignore it, but it stands for vertical lines, undefined slope, and x equals a number for the equation. Okay, so if that helps you, just think VUX to help you remember that we are working with vertical and horizontal lines, what their slope is and what their equation looks like. So like hoi here is another way to help you remember. H stands for horizontal. O is actually a 0. It's a 0 slope. And then the y is going to be y equals a number for the equation. Always y equals. All right, so and this one, when it says every point on a horizontal line contains the same, this should be y value this time. And the equation for all horizontal lines is y equals a number. Again, that number could be positive, negative, or 0 even. And the slope is undefined. So please make sure you don't get confused with what that slope says when I even cross it off with the white out to help. Okay, so it should be slope is 0 for horizontal, slope is undefined for vertical. Let's go ahead and practice this on the next page. So we have a bunch of equations. Some are thrown in as review, like number 3 and 6 are ones that we've done before. To practice graphing, whenever we see an equation that is in y equals form with a number just all by itself, that means it's going to be horizontal. If you see a number, an x equals with a number, that would be vertical. If you see both x and y in an equation, then that's going to just be your simple y equals mx plus b. It's going to be some kind of like a slanted line with the whatever the slope is. Okay, so horizontal at -3. So you find -3 on the y-axis, right? Because these are the y values are going to all be -3. And you can either plot points or you can just draw a line. I'm going to actually do this in a different color so you can see this a little bit better. But that's all we would do here. So even homework tonight, it's going to go so fast because you're literally just saying, is it x equals or y equals? Do I draw a horizontal or a vertical line? This one is x equals 4. So that means this time come over to the x values and find 4. Here it is. And this time you're going to go up and down at that 4. Now, if it helps you, you can always write coordinates. Like you could say 4, 0, 4, 1. And so on. You could put a bunch of points so that you can plot them, and then that can help you draw the line as well. Same thing here. I could have done like 0, -3, 1, -3, and so on, and plot points to be able to draw that line out. Okay, so just to recap how we graph this line, you always start at the y-intercept, So plot a point on the y-axis at 1, 0, 1. Then use the slope, which is -3/1, to draw your rise over run. So we can go down 3, right 1. You could do that a few times. Or you can also go up 3, left 1, and then draw out that line. Okay, so that part was kind of a review. We'll have some of that on the homework as well, just kind of thrown in there. Okay, let's try a few more. So y = 2, it's going to be horizontal. Anytime you see y equals, again, if you have trouble though remembering that, instead what you can do is find y, here it is, find 2, and you would say, how do I keep it so that all the y values are always 2? These are the y values that are always 2, and then when you draw a line to connect them, it would be horizontal. So there'd be a bunch of points all having 2 as the y value. Again, if it helps you also plot points, like write 0, 2, 1, 2, 2, 2, like that. And that way you can see exactly those points create a horizontal line. Okay, x = -5 would then be vertical. And it's all the way in this corner here because the x value is -5. These are the x values. -5 is all the way here. And again, you can go up and down and at 0. So if you need points, oops, this is going to be -5, 0. And then you could also do like -5, 1 or -1 or, whatever it is. Those points you don't have to draw in, but I'm just showing you how they can work to get the following points on this vertical line. Okay, and then the last one, again, you're looking at the 2 to start, put a point at 0, 2, and then the rise of a run is going to be up 1 and right 2. Or you can go down 1 and left 2. You just need like 2 or 3 points and then draw out your line. Should look like that. Okay, so that was kind of it for how to graph lines, which include vertical and horizontal ones, as well as some of the review. Now we're going to practice going the other way around, where you're going to be given a graph of the line and you just need to write its equation. So if it helps you, think of that little mnemonic device, Voxboy. If that doesn't help you, then just think vertical lines are always x equals a number. Horizontal lines are always y equals a number. So that can help us when we see whichever graph it is, then we know how to write the equation for it. So this first one is a vertical line. It's sitting at -3, right? So all of the x values are -3, -3, 1, -3, 2, even -3, 0, etc. There's so many points all on this line here. So what I noticed by looking at those coordinates is that all of the x values are always -3. So we can write our equation as x equals -3. Or you can look at this little mnemonic device to help. Because it was vertical, it's got to have x equals a number for the equation. The next one is horizontal. Look carefully at the y value this time. This is the y value, it's 15. So all of the y values are always 15. If it helps you, then write them out like 0, 15. Let's see, 5, 15 would be this point here. And then you could do 10, 15, and so on. But that's kind of where those points are coming from. The y values this time are always 15 to make a horizontal line. And finally, we finish up with this last one. It's sitting at 21 for the x value is at 21 and it is vertical. So that should have the equation x equals a number. But all of these points, if you want to write any of them out, 21, 0, 21, 1, 21, actually it was 3. If you look at this first point, 21, 6, and so on. All of those so that x equals 21. Okay, so we are basically done with, everything we needed to cover. If you look at the next page though, there is one last page of just more practice of the same thing, and homework is pretty much like that too. So like numbers 1 through 3 are going to be just trying out each of those examples. And then number 4, you're going you're graphing them instead of just writing the equation. So you're kind of practicing both things that we just did. Homework has the same practice. So I'll have the sub pause the video right now so that you can try some of these out while she can, he or she can pass the homework out to you too. And then the rest of the video I'll go through the answers real quick. Okay, so if you pause now and try it out for a few minutes, then you can see if you're doing it right. All right, and then if you did get a chance to try those out, here are the correct answers. On this one, it should be x equals 1 because the x value is always 1 when you're dealing with a vertical line. This one is horizontal, so it's going to be y equals, and it's always at 2 this time. And finally, this last one is vertical, so it's always x equals, and this is sitting at -4. That's how you do those three. Then for the bottom three, you are graphing them. Horizontal lines are always y equals, and vertical lines are always x equals. So I kind of identified that first, then it's easy for me to graph it. So at -3 for my y value, I need to go horizontal, left to right. For x equals 0, that's actually going to be right on the this axis, the y-axis. It's not the x-axis, it is the y-axis, because 0 is right here. 0, 0 is where x would be 0. If you need to have a bunch of points, go ahead and make a bunch of points for yourself as you go ahead and realize the x is always 0, but the y is changing. That's how I can see where those points come from. And finally, y equals 4 would be up here as a horizontal line. And that's it. All right, so if you have questions, bring them with you either Monday or Tuesday, and make sure we go over them.